future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
What's your thoughts on government cover-ups or covert societies attempting to control humanity? Do you believe in ancient astronauts, intergalactic communication, or extraterrestrial visitations? Ever had an experience with disembodied spirits or the paranormal universe? Are these subjects fact or fiction? Each week, Tony and Eddie explore these unbelievable realities and beyond. Exclusively on Truth Be Told.
Welcome back to Truth Be Told, where we believe an experience becomes truth. I'm your host, Tony Sweet, and joining me now in studio, world-renowned psychic Eddie Connor, and along with tonight's co-host, Walt Lusk. Thank you for supporting our sponsors, Earth Friendly Products. For 40 years, they have made our planet a safer, cleaner, and greener place to live with all natural home cleaning products. Request them at your local grocery store or health food markets. For more information about Earth Friendly Products, visit ecos.com. That is ecos.com.
And take your mind on a literary journey by traveling over to adventuresunlimitedpress.com to purchase books from our famed experts featured right here with Tony and Eddie and Walt.
And you know, we here at Truth Be Told, we love to talk about aliens and Egypt. And today, we have some brand spanking new information to stir your information and imagination.
We're speaking with author Xaviant Haze about reptilian aliens and their connection with Egypt. Xaviant Haze is a researcher and archivist of ancient manuscripts with a keen interest in documenting and preserving his findings on lost civilizations, ancient aliens, giants, and the myths of the pre-Diluvian world.
He is the co-author of The Suppressed History of America, author of Aliens in Ancient Egypt, and also Elvis is Alive.
The Complete Conspiracy. His free online library, xaviantvision.com, is home to one of the most complete collections of metaphysical, spiritual, and alternative history books and lectures in the world. Xaviant features lots of links and other resources of all the major works in these fields.
Please, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and welcome author Xaviant Haze.
Well, what do you think of that intro, Xavier?
It's half true.
Oh, well, that's the good point. At least we have more to talk about next time. Well, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Walt, my mic is on, so
I'm having issues today.
I think Walt's been drinking already. I have Eddie Connor here and Walt Lusk here with me.
Pleasure.
Hi.
How you guys?
Great, thank you.
Well, let's get started because I've been listening to a lot of your interviews you've done and books, you know, that you've written. I've read some of your books, and you're very fascinating when it comes to how you tell the stories of your research. And I'm honored to have you on the show because this is what our show is all about. Truth be told, and experience becomes truth. And I want to find out the truth of how you got started in doing this journey, this research that brought you to writing so many books.
Oh, yeah, what sparked it?
Yeah, what sparked it?
Well, I've always been an artist and a writer. Like when I was a child, I was drawing my own comic books and you know, kind of just creating on my own. But I think what really happened was I saw In Search Of when I was 12, and it was the episode of Coral Castle, and that just blew my mind. And basically, from that point on, I was into anything that had to do with paranormal, UFOs, obviously Egypt, you know, when I saw the pyramids and the Sphinx. I probably even seen it earlier, you know, I think I was about 9. I was hanging out with my grandmother, and because she was a writer too. She kind of, like, a lot of my influence from that comes from her, my grandfather when I was younger. So Egypt to me has always been the focal point of what is that? What is going on here? There's something, when you look at the Giza complex, it's so beyond the ordinary that it always kind of stuck in my mind to want to explore that more. And just, doing music, being an artist, I always wrote. So whether it was lyrics, poetry, I was always writing. And, it just happens where you kind of evolve, I guess, as an artist and as a writer, where eventually, I always wanted to write books anyways.
Right.
So it just kind of, life just kind of happens, and it puts you in a position to, the DJing gigs and the music stuff kind of wasn't happening in a way where, that wasn't really the path,
Right.
Even though I was blessed to be able to travel, and, I met amazing people, but, there's a certain point where you kind of know where it kind of filters out, right? And I remember, actually, I was working at Denny's. I was like 23, 24, doing the graveyard shift at Denny's, and I remember getting a speech by the manager, like, oh, you're a good worker, and you can be manager, and I was like, holy crap, I have to go back to school,
Right.
So, and that kind of forced me to kind of go back to film school, which, probably not the smartest thing in terms of, you want to make some money, but it forced me to actually learn to write screenplays and to hone the craft, right?
Right.
So the scripts were, I went to L.A. and worked Rhino Films and Paramount.
Oh, that's great.
And was writing, and eventually it just kind of became, let me try do some nonfiction. I was into sci-fi. I want to write novels. I have so many, probably everybody else, half completed novels lying around. But but what really happened with the nonfiction is I was at the Theosophical Society, and this old crusty hippie there, and he was talking about red-headed giants and Lewis and Clark, what they actually found, and all this amazing, crazy stuff. And I had to listen to Glenn Kimball. He's dead now, but he used to come on Coast to Coast.
Right.
He talked about giants and lost cultures, and I was really fascinated by his stuff. I actually met him at the Seattle Metaphysical Library because he had a whole speech on Prince Madoc and how Madoc came over in the 1100s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was totally into this, and I thought, well, what did Lewis and Clark really find? And that kind of the light bulb went off, and I kind of put together a little, I looked up did some research and looked up how to write, nonfiction books, and how to, basically what happened is you learn that you have to write a proposal. And that's how nonfiction gets sold. So if you're writing novels, you have to complete the novel.
Right.
And then you have to send it in, go through the whole thing where you're looking for agents and all that, and, hope somehow that it'll get through. Well, when you write nonfiction, you basically just have to write a proposal, which you have a couple chapters, you have a marketing plan and outlines, and it's a whole different stuff, but it's actually easier to publish after you've already been published, right? So,
Right.
Yes.
Getting a novel published is hard, but if you have nonfiction work published and a couple of those, then the doors kind of open up. So I kind of stumbled upon putting together this proposal, and a friend of mine who was a journalist, Paul Schrag, is the co-author of my first book, The Suppressed History. He, I kind of went to him for help, and then I was able to somehow find an agent, and I almost just halted the whole thing. I remember there was a point in the process where I was like, I don't have a degree in archaeology. No one's gonna want to read this, right? So I kind of put it away. Actually, I just kind of shelved it.
Yeah, but that means you don't have any bad habits, or you haven't been indoctrinated by what they all indoctrinated with.
Right.
That's more
Exactly,
of an
and I
advantage,
learned all
actually.
this, 'cause
Yeah.
I kind of said, you know what, I'm gonna take this and see what happens with it, and then I learned, basically after getting published and doing all, and then kind of just going down this path of published author and alternative historian, I was like, wow, thank God I never went to
Exactly.
I never went to college and got a degree in freaking archaeology, because then you're stuck in that enclosed academic structure.
Academia.
where you can't really grow.
Right.
You know,
That's
because
true.
there's a lot of professors that have some good ideas and actually want to explore these topics, but aren't really allowed because everyone has to pay the mortgage, man. Everyone has
Right.
family and bills, and it's very few individuals will risk that for
Exactly.
to bring this type of knowledge. And that's why I love Barry Fell, because I read America BC, and that was groundbreaking and incredible. And here's a Harvard linguist talking about finding Gaelic and Druid stuff and Babylonian and Egyptian things in New England and in the 70s, and they just destroyed him. Velikovsky, same thing. He was talking about flood myths and everything, and they tried to destroy him, and now we're like, wait, this guy was correct, which always happens, right?
Yeah.
So you're allowed a certain freedom when you don't go through those institutional things.
Exactly.
Well, and I want the reason I'm asking you this, and I want for our listeners and our viewers, that is because every one of us start seeking the truth, and our passion and our thirst for knowledge of Egypt and aliens and the connection is always kind of comes from the same little passion inside of us. And it fascinates me because we've had a lot of people on the show, and they've talked about the pyramids being a certain of age. It's not there for this type of reason. It had an alien influence. It was was the Anunnaki mining gold. And when you started doing your research, what was the first thing that you did? What did you research first? Was it the alien aspect, or was it why the pyramids were there and how old the pyramids were?
Well, I had been always interested in looking up these things. I remember reading Chariots of the Gods as a teenager.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Chariots of the Gods.
The Egypt and the alien influence is always kind of suspected there was something
Right.
that had that. But what happened was I saw Dr. Carmen Bolter's Pyramid Code series.
Yeah.
Which is a fantastic documentary, and that kind of just put it in perspective of like the lost technology, like Chris Dunn talks about, and to be able to see ancient megalithic stuff with like clear machining marks on it, that just kind of it was like, wait a minute. So even without accepting the alien part, just
Right.
that alone is enough to say, wait, there was obviously something going on before the flood.
Right.
Because another thing I looked into was the whole monatomic gold issue. And when I looked into that, I discovered that what Sir Lawrence Gardner and Alfred Watkins, some of the first explorers into the pyramids. When I went in there, they found all this salt, basically. They might have thought it was monatomic gold, but it was actually just sea salt. And there's shells in the pyramids, right? And it's like basically you can go out in Egypt and there's like whale bones. So, to me, all that says, well, that was here before the flood. And pretty much we're talking about the flood happened 12,000 years ago.
Right.
Hello.
Right.
Pretty much. So, and then of course the alien stuff. It was really important for me to look into, where does that come from? Eric von Däniken, Zachariah Sitchin, right? The gold, mining for gold. And I really wanted to take a closer look at their works, and because like a problem is when you're writing stuff like this and you're reading things, because I love this type of information, a lot of it's just rehashed from Sitchin's work,
Right.
And for me to actually do this correctly, I had to make sure that it wasn't, make sure that, we talk about him fairly, we're going to talk about von Däniken fairly, and we're going to talk about those issues and kind of see where, where it really comes from and what is true and what's not true. And but the alien question is really, really prevalent in Egypt, and the power structures in Egypt, they hate it. They don't want anything to do with it, no matter how true it is.
Right. Of course, they want to deny it. I mean,
Of course.
Yeah. And so let's start with the alien influence. Did the alien influence start with them either being in charge or them actually building the pyramids itself?
The thing is, in the Zep-Tepi structure, which is the first time, right, and the old Assyrian kings list, they mentioned the divine semi-gods, like the king, like thousands of years ago, and all of the Cyrus, it's all space. It's has the god is all from the Milky Way, so they're all about extraterrestrial encounters. But my thing is that 12,000 years ago was nothing.
Right.
They're looking back, and I'm looking back millions and millions of years. I firmly believe that in more than one alien species, obviously, and many points of contact and throughout history. And I think that the pyramid field in Giza has been there since as long as there's been contact here, as long as there's been an alien race coming to experiment on this planet. I think that field has been there. I think it's just the way it's lined up, like mathematically and geometry, like the way it's basically the focal point of the Earth, and if you're in space, you would see it. So it just makes sense that that's one place that no matter how many generations of aliens or different types of species, I believe it always was condensed there. And that's why the area is important, because there's so much of that still around. I mean, there's so much megalithic stuff in Egypt, and 70% is still buried by the sand, right? So can you imagine what really is there to be discovered?
Oh.
There's a ship down there somewhere. There's bound to be like a ship or something.
Oh, for sure. There has to be.
And Xaviant.
I mean, what?
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say just, what about, they know there are underground chambers underneath the Sphinx.
Yep.
Well, there was a guy digging in his backyard
just
a couple months ago, and he found a big, long tunnel.
Right. So they deny entrance, and then they don't, they don't. It's just everything is under control, man. Like, no matter what government it is, there's only certain points that they allow you to search.
And
to shut everything else off.
And do you feel like, I know this sounds like an elementary question probably, but do you feel like with the growth of the internet and people's ability to have access to things we never had before, do you think that's scaring some of these authorities in charge?
Well, that's why they had the whole net neutrality thing passed.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Let me tell you something. If there was no internet, we'd all be in concentration camps a long time ago.
I believe that.
Well, FEMA would have a say,
100% true, man. Like, watch the series Jericho. That they were trying to get that cracking a long time ago. I mean, thank God. Thank God for the internet, because one, it allows information at the snap of a finger. So the books I write, if I had to write these 100 years ago, or even 50 years ago, or 40 years ago, it would take you like 20 years to write it, and a ton of money just to be able to travel and do the research.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it's a snap of a finger, man. A couple of months, crank it out. So, and with YouTube, I mean, there's just so much amazing YouTube channels and stuff you can see. There's so much stuff you can watch on YouTube that's clear and good. Even if you'll never ever make it to see those sites in your life, you could see it and be there. Now, of course, there's bad and there's disinformation, and it's part of the progress of learning and experiencing this sort of technocratic hierarchy that we live in, and it's just a matter of basically sifting through all of the trash and learning how to disseminate what's good and what's crap, and that's easy once you kind of put in the work. It's pretty you can spot it. Well, but I mean, to me, it's just the matter of taking the time, man, and opening your mind.
Well, I think opening your mind, and you're obviously coming from a great place of authenticity yourself. And then as you utilize the internet and Skype and other things that we can do now in the blink of an eye, I would imagine you're able to really connect with actual eyewitnesses to a point with certain phenomenon. And I want to ask you, for new listeners to Truth Be Told here, We are talking about the reptilian aliens that are connected to Egypt. But will you give the audience a little brief description of the different types of aliens, but what your connection is with the reptilian aliens connected to Egypt, Xaviant?
Well, I believe that there's many different species of aliens, and some that we don't even know about. But definitely the most prevalent in culture would be the gray aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then the reptilian, like the reptilian is, when I did the book, it was never my intention to have the title, about the reptilians and all that. That's just marketing.
Yep.
They figure that it spice it up a little,
Right.
add some, add a little flair, sell some extra copies. But when I did the book, it was important for me to write about this because it's like the most controversial and just lauded topic there is in the alien field, right? So when I looked into it, I cannot believe how many, in ancient history, how much of the reptilian influence is in every culture. I mean, it's just there. It's just like so sickening to think that this all could have been BS. It's it doesn't make sense. So that was insane. And to bring it back to Egypt, I mean, obviously you can't say for certain. When they found in Sumer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of the archaeologist's name off the top of my head, but in Sumer they discovered the Ubaid culture, and the Ubaid culture had these trippy statues of clearly reptilian-looking beings, right? And now in the same area they found a bunch of elongated skulls.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now we find these in ancient Egypt as well.
Right.
Elongated skulls, right? And then you find them, of course, in Peru, and they just had DNA studies saying it's not there's no sort of direct DNA link with anything on this planet. So it's completely alien, right? I mean, good luck getting that announced on NBC, though.
That's right.
Well, of course, yeah. Again, it baffles me that they keep trying to deny the truth.
Well, explain it away.
Yeah, explain it away, and you can see in the hieroglyphics and pretty much anywhere around the world that it's had an influence. The reptilians and the elongated skulls have made an influence in every ancient culture, pretty much all over the world.
Yeah, it's all over, man. The elongated skull, the reptilian myths. I mean, think about Mexican myths.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The reptilian basically came and gave everybody culture.
So, with
in
the Brotherhood
India,
of the Snakes, is that the one primarily that was in Egypt?
in Egypt, not so much reptilian. There's the god Sobek, which they kind of put it with the alligator. But their whole mythology is alien, basically. Is the sun god, right, Ra, and I actually, for me, it was important too to read. I had to read all this, like all of the ancient manuscripts, all the Book of the Dead, and all that stuff, and take parts out of it that we're talking about, UFO encounters or alien encounters, right? And there's a bunch of it in there, and I put it in the book, and so sun god Ra, he sends like his son Osiris, the same mythology, so like astrotheology with Jesus or any of that, Mithra, kind of just permeated down culture. It's been repeated every 1,000 years or every so 100 years they kind of repeat the same story. But it all has to do with like space platoons and military missions. It's completely Battlestar Galactica. Like, to me, Battlestar Galactica explains everything.
Not Star Trek?
Yeah. Well, that's one of my favorites too. Okay, let's go back. I want to really focus on Egypt for a second because you were talking about in the book that it explains how Akhenaten was the last pharaoh, and he was entrusted with the knowledge of not only stargates and other technologies. Could you explain a little bit more for our listeners and viewers about that? Because I'm not real familiar with that.
Well, basically, Akhenaten's grandfather had a UFO encounter, and they put it on the walls of Karnak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't say for sure if that encounter was from, reptilians that had just come here,
Mm-hmm.
or if that they had, managed to come back after the flood, like, they had survived underground and managed to get some of their technology together,
Right.
or whatever. But the thing is, like, when they appeared, that's when Egypt changed. That's when the Golden Age began. And so Akhenaten kind of grew up privy to all of this, right? I mean, he was like a little superstar, teenage superstar.
He was a young guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, oh yeah, he was super young. I mean,
Yeah.
he'd be like, God forbid, Justin Bieber or some, some in that sort of realm, But so he knew what was up. Plus, he was raised around like women, so like his mother and the Pharaoh Queen Hatshepsut, who was basically instilling him the old ways, right? Because it was apparent that once this alien influence came in, they were building technology, but then it was also warlike, right? It was kind of it was going away from the original teachings of Egypt, which is matriarchal, like basically women rule, and the man being in tune with the feminine and the masculine, right? So,
right.
Like the basic power structure had always been women, which makes sense. Obviously, they give birth, they give life. So Akhenaten was kind of getting this information as well, at the same time seeing all of the wars, seeing like his father and all the conquering, and this whole new direction the planet was going in. And he wasn't really, he was unique because here he is, like, and who's to say if he was part alien or not,
He looks like
art
it.
The art in itself is incredible. Like, that's the whole thing. That whole period is so phenomenal. But he really grew up with this information. I think there was a point when he just said, you know what, this ain't happening, man. This ain't right. We got to go back to the way it's supposed to be, and use this knowledge for other things, like more useful, meaningful things. And a lot of that had to do with how he perceived the banking institutions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which basically were coming out of Egypt during this time, because it was like the Amun priesthood. So it's like, the power structure would be the Amun priesthood, and which were the banks, and they were kind of using what we know now as fractional reserve banking, or even the Federal Reserve type system. It pretty much kind of started there in that time, because they were using the excuse to sell you the idea of going to the underworld, or securing your place in heaven, and this
Mm-hmm.
and that. And if you bought this little trinket, or if you got this spell, right? So it's like a big organization, a big business. And much like Martin Luther, when Martin Luther discovered that, for a quarter I could get this certificate from the Church of Rome claiming I'm going to get into heaven. He was like, what? He rebelled, and he brought some truths out, and really shook up the church. So it's the kind of same thing that Akhenaten did. He wanted to basically put the banks out of business, put this warlike structure that had been created out of business, and take it to the next level, take it to where what humanity's supposed to be. Like, we are creative beings, right?
Right.
So it's our nature. Like, we're supposed to be creative. We're supposed to be in tune with nature, and
Which
and
we're not
that's what
too
he
much
wanted to do.
anymore.
And he basically did it. He was able to put all the banks out of business, destroy the temples, put everybody in check, and kind of create this own little utopia, and have his own little, for good or bad, but his own little city, right?
Right.
And try to change things, but of course, it's really hard when you're one guy.
Well, it's just
fighting.
him, and he was the one that basically worshiped one god versus many gods.
Exactly. exactly. He took it back to the original, which is
Right.
the sun, now, which is which is really what the Bible and all that stuff comes
Yes.
from Egypt.
Yes.
Son of man,
Yes.
S-U-N of man, basically. No sun, we're all dead. Basically, we're screwed. And so that's it, man. Like you don't need any other god other than that. And then you have to understand, because the Egyptians were deep. They understood all forms of metaphysics and sciences, and they had an understanding of like how to separate, sun, God, or the sun, whatever the invisible being, like which is good, right?
Right.
And then separate from like all of the real deep complexities of understanding metaphysics and understanding the universe, how it works, and karma, and this and that. And the Hindus have it down as well, like the ancient Indians and the Vedics. And they have a whole, like they're straight up with their like, yeah, there's flying machines and nuclear wars going on.
Yeah,
like they don't hold nothing back.
Right.
Those good old Sanscripts.
So can I ask you this? And so you're telling me that the alien influence helped create the Egyptian way. Is that correct?
Excuse me?
So the alien influence helped create the Egyptian way, their thought, their religion, all this stuff. But when Akhenaten decided to go back to the original, is that when the Brotherhood of the Snake stepped in and decided to try to destroy him? And
yeah, because he was fighting against them from behind the scenes. Like those were what was in control behind the scenes, right? And that's the Amun priesthood. Like they were already there, so he was already privy to that.
Right.
He was basically fighting them because he wasn't feeling with the direction they wanted to go. So
that makes
and that's
sense.
what happened, and that's what got him killed. And then like once they got rid of him, then it was gravy. Then they could kind of go back and steer man. It's just basically there's a point a couple thousand, like 5,000 years ago, where it just became warlike.
Right.
And gold and money orientated.
Didn't they try to wipe him off the surface? I mean, didn't wipe his name and destroy all his...
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, you don't get erased from history because because you...
Right.
You didn't do anything.
There's got to be a major reason where they destroyed it. And the funny thing is when all that resurfaced, it really, really shook up the institution, which had just begun to kind of have the Smithsonian Institution and just kind of basically create the false history of the world with evolution and get rid of the giants and all the real before the Smithsonian, it was pretty well common knowledge that there were ancient giants.
Yes.
Right.
And there was Atlantis.
Even here in North America.
Like long lost cultures. It wasn't even a big deal. But if you read magazines or newspaper articles, yeah, you could read all about the giants, and like it wasn't scary, no one cared, it was cool. But then, they put in it, and the Smithsonian got involved and kind of just dictated, the Royal Sciences of England and stuff, kind of used Darwin's theories and just put a clamp on it, man, and made sure that anything that didn't fit would just be suppressed, destroyed, or just forgotten.
So when did your theory, or even knowledge that when did the alien influence completely leave Egypt? Because like right now, even though the remnants are still there, the pyramids are still there, the artifacts are still there, we don't necessarily see them, the reptilians. So when did they finally leave Egypt, or have they?
Well, I think that just over a period of time, it just kind of died out. The physical traits, and that's not to say that there are some of those ancient bloodlines that still exist behind the scenes at a level you can never even get to, or even like you would just never even know. It'd just be impossible to meet. So I think that kind of, because you look at like Lord Byron, a famous poet. I mean, he had like little horns and like little lizard feet and stuff. And there's been instances where you can see some of the genetic things creeping through. And so I think a lot of it were killed off you know, and I think a lot of it just kind of over time the genetic traits might have morphed into something else or just disappeared completely. That's not to say that there isn't other reptilians who have been visiting or other reptilians that remained underground for all this time, or, you know, I mean, that's the thing. Like, and then you have the whole perception, you know, like you can't see them because they resonate on different, like, vibrational frequency that you can't see with their eyes.
So the
Stuff like David Icke talks about, which could be true as well, you know. You know, I'm open to all of that stuff. I think even if you see something amazing, how do you know? Like, how do you know it wasn't just like a hologram from the CIA just to mess with you? You know, like there's so much. There's so much. There's so much. Even some will even say that grays were created by, you know, the government as, you know, a form of psyops or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But to me, it's important to keep on in mind. And if you do have an encounter, like, obviously, you know, people are gonna think you're crazy, but
they do,
you know,
anyway.
that's just what it is, man. Like, I've had ghostly encounters. I've seen, you know, I've seen UFOs. I mean, you know, I can't wait to see Bigfoot. That's the one thing, like, I really want to see. But I've been very blessed to have these experiences, and, you know, I wish that more people would have them. And I think, and if they do have them, I hope they don't go crazy. You know? I hope they just accept it for what it is.
Eddie and I both, I can't remember if Walt has, but Eddie and I both have seen UFOs.
I haven't had the privilege yet.
Yeah.
I'm still a Virginian.
And it does change your life. It does, you know, for me it wasn't like but it changed my life of you know, believing there was more
powerful.
It's very powerful.
Oh, it's totally powerful. And listen, for the people who may just be tuning in, you're listening to Truth Be Told with
Tony Sweet.
I'm Eddie Connor.
And I'm Walt Lusk.
Our guest today is Xaviant Haze, and he's talking to us about Egypt, the reptilians. He's an author, and he's giving us some fascinating information here. And you beat me to it, Tony, which I love. I was going to ask you, Xaviant, about I like that you're an artist, number one, and that you're creative and artistic, and you've got a grounded sort of left-brainness about you simultaneously. So you do your due diligence with the left brain part of it. But I feel like it's the artist and the creative part of you, meaning the intuitive part of you, that's kept you open-minded enough to be able to have some of these, quote, ghostly experiences and maybe even some multi-dimensional experiences with even other extraterrestrials. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely correct, because, you know, the ability to disseminate information, right, and to be able to wade through the crap
Right.
and figure out what is actually useful. And then the most important part is how, you know, because then so you got to balance that with an artist. Now, not every artist, a lot of artists are you know, you're weird anyways. Everybody's weird no matter what.
Yeah.
But if you're an artist, you're extra weird. But a lot of artists are so weird that they can't, like, finish a painting or complete a project or get it out, you know?
Yeah.
There's a lot of introvert going on. So for me, it's always been important to be able to recognize, you know, this is who I am, but at the same time, you know, you got to put it out there. You got to make sure this can be read, you know, especially writing books. Like, you know, no one reads anymore, so you got to, like, you know, really make it visual and really write in a way where the Joe Schmo, you know, and that's the challenge. How do you take this amazing, mind-blowing information and make it readable to a 12-year-old and to an 80-year-old and in between, right?
Yeah.
And that's the key. But the most important thing is to be able to let it go, man. Like, you know, here it is, boom, it's out. Like once you finish a painting, it belongs to the world. It's no longer yours.
Yep. And you have to be brave enough to give it to the world.
You gotta, exactly. You gotta let go, man. You gotta say, hey, here it is. It's done. You know.
Have you met?
Now it's on you.
Yeah. Have you met other people who have had experiences with extraterrestrials, whether it be the reptilian or other multidimensional beings, that when you were in their presence, it just helped you expand who you are already as an artist and as a researcher?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've met a lot of people, you know. Some might have been crazy, and some I actually believed.
Yep. So
I'm always interested, you know. for me, I love people, man. I love to talk to people. I love to listen. You know, I'm a cool guy, man. I'm my own business. I go with the flow. You know, I just be nice, man. Like from Roadhouse. You know, to me, Roadhouse movie
Right.
is like the greatest philosophy of all time. You know, just be nice, man.
That's hilarious.
So,
If we could take us a step back and talk about Egypt for a minute, can you touch on the fact that why you believe the purpose of the pyramids, which I kind of agree, is to transmit energy and expand consciousness?
oh man, 100%. That's what it is about.
Yeah, because it certainly isn't a tomb,
why
that's for
else-
darn sure.
Why else would it be? You know, the idea that it's a death machine is just preposterous.
No.
You know, for me, it's especially when you realize like everything else in that pyramid field
Yes.
has to do with like
Yes.
vibrations
Yes.
and sound healing
Right.
and the ability to go into these certain chambers and you know, heal, which is what they were doing. They were basically healing through like water and crystal and all these amazing, you know, geometric things, right? And so when you hear about they made the building blocks move in the air by the little wizard, like with this flute, you know, they'll say a little. There's like a legend in Peru talking about like, you know, the little wizards playing their flute and the stones were flying.
Oh,
Well, that's
wow.
just saying, you know, it's like the walls of Jericho, you know, coming down because
Yes.
of the horn. It's just letting you know that that's really the key is the vibrational
It's
field
definitely vibration.
and figuring out how that works. I mean, that's what the Force is about, right? You know, when Yoda's explaining, you know, it's not
Yes.
this, you know, it's not this crude matter, man. It's the forces all around you, and that's kind of what I believe in. And so when I looked into all that in the pyramid field, it made sense that that machine was for that reason, to keep humanity in that state, to keep consciousness at a level where it's creative, where it's in harmony with nature. Because I think, you know, the aliens and, you know, whoever built this and had an understanding of cyclical time and knowing that there's a golden age, a silver age, and, you know, there's ups and downs, and, you know, knowing that there would be periods of dark ages, right?
Yes.
That the pyramid field would be needed, you know, and see, I think after the flood, it just, you know, there's still a little bit there, of course, because you could go and bring your batteries and recharge it.
Right.
You know, it's still a little bit there, but I think the overall plateau is damaged and it doesn't work like it used to. And then, you know, how can we figure out how to get that working? And then is it, you know, too late? I mean, the world is just freaking a mess, man.
It truly
It
is.
makes me sick every time I kind of go out and just see the state of the people. And it's like zombies, man. It's just no one. Everyone's so disconnected.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with the chemicals in the foods and
Right.
you know, all the radiation we're bombarded with all the time, and just, you know, the television, you know, the greatest mind control device ever created.
Yep.
This is true.
And do you find that it's the United States seems to have more of a monopoly on that type of behavior toward its citizens than most other countries do, or do you see it pretty consistently around the world?
Oh yeah, well we created that, man. We are like the kingpins and God figures of all of this. And see, people who've never traveled, they can't get it.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
if you've been blessed to travel, to be able to, and I'm very lucky, man, because I was in Europe and Germany and Italy before like the Euro conversion.
Oh,
So I remember when times were good and the money went somewhere, you know.
right.
Now it sucks because you're going to lose a big chunk of your money,
Right.
and that's and they want that because they don't want you to go anywhere,
That's right.
right?
Yep.
So, you know, but when you're in Germany and you're like, wow, you know, this clean, amazing, you know, history, amazing people, totally not down with GMOs, totally not down with the Illuminati. I mean, they're aware because they've been through, you know, a whole bunch of stuff, right?
Yes.
So it exists, but at the same time, you know, when you go to London and you look at, you know, all the history there, then you look at, holy crap, this is like basically what happens in London happens first, and then it kind of seeps to us. So they get like the experiment first, and then it comes to us because it's basically the same control, you know.
Yep.
We really didn't win the Revolutionary War, really. I mean, we won the battles, but like in the long run, what they wanted to do actually came true with controlling the Federal Reserve System.
Yes, it did.
And then they have the same global type of conquering that's here, which is globalization, right? Allowing mass immigrants and flooding, flooding the countries. If you go to London, I mean, it's freaking horrible over there. Or France, I mean, obviously you can see on the news, it's disgusting. So and it's just meant to destroy the culture, right? And destroy sovereign, what makes your country unique. So those are all parts of the building blocks to establishing the New World Order and the one world government.
It's true.
Well, I want to see if there's a connection here because, when we created this country, United States of America, if you can go to Washington, D.C. and see such an influence by Egypt of the way we
Washington
built.
Monument, for starters.
Yeah. So do you think the reptilians or the alien influence, the negative part of it, somehow through history seeped into the United States as we were creating it?
Well, I don't really even see that as negative. I mean, I see it as it all comes from Akhenaten's time in ancient Egypt and all of these mystery schools, like which are from the reptilians and from the Masonic orders and the Templars, right?
Right.
These are all extensions of what happened in Akhenaten's time. So when the Freemasons, their whole thing is based off of all their symbolism is based off of ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
And you can look at DC and it's ridiculous. They have obelisks there, and it all connects right back to Cairo, right? So
yes, it is.
That is there. Now the thing is, how much of it is negative, how much of it is wicked, and how much of it is because a lot of those guys were learned men too. Our founding fathers were like learned men, and I don't think there was any real negative things they were trying to do. They were just trying to keep up with the ancient traditions and kind of build a society and build a whole new nation based on on these ancient schools, ancient mystery schools, and so it goes both ways. It's not all negative. There are positive things to it as well.
Oh, of course.
Well, speaking of, I mean, it's what you do. Isn't this also part of everything you're sharing with the audience here with Tony? Your people and our people can go to xaviantvision.com. Is this part of what you do on your free online library?
Yeah, well, my free library has all kinds of lectures and a whole bunch of ebooks about these topics and more. There's because I'm into all of this stuff, right? So there's going to be books on Masonic, there's going to be books on ancient Hindus, there's going to be books on Egypt, there's going to be books on aliens, there's going to be every single metaphysical or mysterious or even like giants or just like what's up with the Rosh Hashanah in France, like why are there symbols of corn on this 15th century chapel way before anyone ever went to the New World,
Wow. Well, before we get you out of here, because I can't believe this time has flown, I always
It's to have you back.
I know. Well, I definitely want you back because I want to talk about the suppressed history of America because you've touched on some of it.
Yeah.
And this is actually a great invitation, like you said, for you to come back. But I do want to say, I love history. I'm a big history buff, and I'm also a family history I guess I could say expert because I've been doing it for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
And I found out that my seventh great-grandfather was Richard Stockton, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, and he was a Mason. And I've always wanted to research and find out his story and go into that arena of.
That's really cool, man.
Yeah, no, when I found out, I was like, oh my God, this is pretty amazing. And I'm very proud to be a part of it. But it's that mystery. And that's another, like I said, I'm like you. It's like, I want to know. I want to know the truth.
I want to know, man. That's, my on my mother's side, like my grandmother, like, you know, they came over from Ellesbaum, Sweden in the 1650s.
Oh,
and
wow.
Went to Wilmington, Delaware, right?
Isn't that amazing?
And, you know, and like all of my ancestors kind of stem from that period. Like, you know, they fought in the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and they all went west, right? 'Cause I'm from Seattle. So, like, all of my grandmas, like, survived the covered wagons, you know? And,
Isn't that amazing?
And my great-great-grandmother was Blackfeet Indian in Montana. So it's, you know, it's so fascinating. Like, I kind of want to get, like, a DNA test or whatever to see if I have Cro-Magnon
I did
genes or
that.
something,
Yeah, Ancestry.com.
Yeah, I did that through Ancestry.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, it actually really showed me that a lot of what people told me it proved wrong. So, you know, they said, oh, yeah, you have Cherokee Indian, and, oh, yeah, really? Okay. None. But it showed me it says I'm a percent of Indian descent, Asian descent, which I'm very fascinated how many thousands of years ago that was. And when you mentioned India, if you have the knowledge of that, again, I would love to have you come back and talk about that too, because we have not touched that subject here on Truth Be Told.
Yet. So. Yeah, and Xaviant, are you going to be in the L.A. area anytime this year?
Well, I mean, I live in Vegas, so...
oh, look at you.
Well, get your butt over here, and you can come in studio.
Come on down.
Yeah, we would love to have you in studio.
For sure.
Oh, definitely.
Well, like I said, this is very fascinating. Your books are on Amazon. You can get them on your website. Is it Xaviant?
It's XaviantVision.com. That's for the free online library. He also is the co-author of The Suppressed History of America and author of Aliens in Ancient Egypt, along with, and we're going to talk about it one day, Elvis is Alive.
I can't wait to talk
alive.
about this.
Can't wait.
Is Elvis still alive, or is he gone?
History now too. So
what did you say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
He's writing the sequel to The Suppressed History of America now.
Oh my gosh! See, that's where I'm going to be really watching out for. So
super quick.
Have you guys read that? I could probably get you a copy from the publisher.
I have not, and I would love to. I would love to read
that would be awesome.
Yeah, all right, cool. Well, you know, we'll talk on an email, whatever, and I'll send the information to the publicist. They'll send you guys a copy.
Thank you so much.
And one super quick question with a one-sentence answer. How do you, Xaviant Haze, stay optimistic during this turbulent time in the country?
I stay optimistic because life is good, man, and I do as much good as possible. And every day, you know, I'm thankful to be here, and you know, I just, you know, and life is good. Like when the pagan make it hard, when you make life hard, it's going to be hard. Yeah. But when you are doing good things and you're putting in the work, right, and you're blessed, man. You're protected.
Yep.
And I never worry about wickedness at all.
Good. And then that way, the good keeps coming back over and over and over.
Exactly, man. Karma's real, man. The universe, and you can give it any name you want, but the laws are the laws.
That's right.
Well,
yes, they are.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you,
the crowd goes wild for Xaviant Haze. All right, sir. Well, thank you so much, and please keep in touch. Definitely want to have you back, and this is going to be a great segue to number 2.
Thank you. Have fun. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
sir. Bye.
Remember to feel the power of the Force.
Oh, Lord Jesus. All right, we'll be back here in just a minute. When we come back, we have Eddie Conner doing Unlock the Universe Within. And if you don't know what that is, you're going to have to stay tuned. And we'll be right back.
Don't leave town.
That's right. Be right back.